We've seen how geography divides, isolates, and entraps nations. But now we head north, to a region that's changing faster than any other. In this final chapter of Prisoners of Geography, we uncover the hidden power struggle brewing in the Arctic. As the ice melts, new borders emerge, new trade routes open, and the race for resources begins. This isn't science fiction, this is the new map of the 21st century. The Arctic is warming at twice the global average. As the ice retreats, something once inaccessible is now up for grabs: territory, resources, and control. Beneath the Arctic Ocean lie vast, largely untapped reserves of oil, gas, and rare earth minerals. Estimates suggest that up to 13% of the world's undiscovered oil, and 30% of its natural gas could be located here. A geopolitical goldmine hidden beneath ice. The northern sea route, which follows Russia's Arctic coastline, is becoming increasingly navigable due to seasonal ice melt. This sea lane shortens the journey from East Asia to Europe by up to 40% compared to the Suez Canal, potentially saving weeks of travel and honestly millions in fuel costs. For countries with Arctic coastlines, like Russia, Canada, and the United States, this transformation is, well, a strategic game-changer. But even non-Arctic powers like China have declared themselves near-Arctic states to gain influence in the region. Russia has reopened military and civilian outposts along its northern coast, while also investing in Arctic-capable oil rigs and liquefied natural gas facilities. China, meanwhile, has partnered with Moscow on infrastructure and energy projects in the region. As ice melts, the Arctic is ceasing to be a distant, desolate space. It's turning into a competitive, commercial, and militarized zone, one that could shape the 21st century. International law, particularly the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, governs Arctic claims, but interpretations vary. Countries can claim extended continental shelves, leading to overlapping and contested boundaries. This new accessibility comes at a cost. The Arctic is a fragile ecosystem. Oil spills, mining, and increased shipping could have catastrophic consequences for wildlife and global climate systems. In the Arctic, what was once frozen solid is now up for debate. This isn't just about cold terrain, it's about power, profit, and honestly, the politics of a melting world. And no one understands this opportunity better than Russia, the undisputed heavyweight of the Arctic Circle. Of all the nations with territory above the Arctic Circle, Russia has been the most aggressive in establishing its dominance. For Russia, the Arctic isn't a remote periphery, it's a core element of its national strategy. Nearly 20% of Russia's GDP is linked to Arctic activity. The region supplies a large portion of its oil and natural gas and, well, Moscow views it as critical to the country's long-term energy security and export potential. Russia has revitalized over 50 Soviet-era Arctic outposts, many of them equipped with radar, anti-air systems, and runways for long-range bombers. Its northern fleet, based in Murmansk, is the most powerful of its 4 naval fleets. Russia maintains more than 40 operational icebreakers, a number unmatched globally. These vessels enable year-round access to Arctic waters and support military and commercial navigation even during the harshest winters. The United States, by contrast, has just 2 heavy icebreakers. In 2007, Russia drew global attention when it sent a submersible 14,000 feet below the Arctic ice to plant a titanium Russian flag on the seabed of the North Pole. This act was symbolic, but it made a clear statement. Russia intends to lead in the Arctic. Russia is using international law to stake claims over vast swaths of the Arctic Ocean. Under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, often called UNCLOS, coastal nations can extend their territory if they prove the underwater continental shelf is a geological extension of their land. Russia's claims overlap with those of Canada and Denmark, leading to a slow-motion dispute that may take years to resolve. Yamal and Norilsk are major Russian industrial zones within the Arctic. The Yamal LNG project, for instance, is one of the largest liquefied natural gas ventures in the world, exporting to Europe and Asia through the Northern Sea route. Russia has invited China to co-invest in Arctic infrastructure, including LNG terminals and shipping ports. Beijing's inclusion in the region boosts Moscow's economic influence and gives China indirect Arctic access. Russia's Arctic push is not just about geography, it's about legacy, leverage, and leadership. Russia's geography forces it to look north. The Arctic isn't just a new frontier, it's a continuation of old ambitions in a new climate. Russia sees the Arctic not as ice, but as opportunity. And, it's already building the infrastructure of control. But Russia isn't the only power with eyes on the Arctic. The United States and NATO are now catching up, and the balance of power is shifting. While Russia builds, the United States and NATO are catching up. After years of strategic neglect, the Arctic has now become a central focus in Washington and Brussels. The United States Department of Defense has named the Arctic a region of increasing strategic competition. The Navy, Coast Guard, and Air Force have all launched separate Arctic strategies to strengthen presence, resilience, and readiness in the high north. Alaska gives the United States a critical Arctic coastline, and military investments there have really surged. The United States is positioning itself as a key player in the region, recognizing the growing importance of the Arctic. Despite strategic ambitions, the United States actually lags far behind in icebreaking capabilities. Right now it operates only 2 heavy icebreakers, and, well, one of those is over 40 years old. In contrast, Russia operates more than 40, including nuclear-powered vessels that can navigate thick ice all year round. NATO, though traditionally focused on the Atlantic, has increased joint exercises in the Arctic Circle. Norway is a key player here, offering deep knowledge of Arctic operations and hosting cold-weather training for alliance forces. Other NATO members like Canada and Denmark also have Arctic territory. Canada has expanded patrols and invested in Arctic-capable aircraft and satellite systems. Denmark oversees Greenland, which is a vital geopolitical asset due to its proximity to the Arctic sea lanes and the U.S. airbase at Thule. The US, Canada, Norway, and the UK are coordinating under a growing Arctic defense framework, sharing intelligence and running surveillance missions across the polar region. As shipping routes open, the question of freedom of navigation becomes, well, more contentious. The US insists that international waters must remain open, while Russia has tried to impose restrictions on the Northern Sea route. As Tim Marshall put it, the Arctic is not just an empty ice field, it's a chessboard and the pieces are moving fast. Washington and NATO, they realize that the Arctic is no longer optional, it's essential. But honestly, closing the icebreaker and infrastructure gap will take years. And in the Arctic, every season really matters. The melting Arctic isn't peaceful, it's strategic, and well, the race isn't coming, it's already underway. But beyond navies and flags, there's a bigger story at play. The Arctic is ground zero for climate, commerce, and the future of global security. The Arctic story is about more than oil and ships. It's also about survival. This region is one of the most fragile ecosystems on the planet, and the changes happening here will ripple across the entire globe. As the Arctic becomes more accessible, industries are rushing in. Fishing fleets are moving into newly thawed waters. Cruise ships now travel through once impassable routes, offering what some call last-chance tourism. And global shipping giants are testing northern corridors to reduce travel time between continents. Mining companies are, eyeing deposits of rare earth elements beneath the Arctic ice, minerals that are just critical for electronics, electric vehicles, and renewable energy. But extracting these comes with some major environmental and political risks. Unlike Antarctica, which is protected by a multinational treaty, the Arctic is, open for business and conflict. Its lack of overarching governance really increases the potential for disputes over territory, navigation rights, and resource extraction. As Arctic permafrost melts, it releases these massive amounts of methane, a greenhouse gas that's honestly dozens of times more potent than carbon dioxide. This creates a feedback loop that just accelerates global warming, affecting sea levels, weather patterns, and agriculture all around the world. Indigenous communities such as the Inuit and the Sami are facing displacement and cultural erosion. Their traditional hunting grounds are disappearing, and infrastructure built on permafrost is collapsing, yet their voices are often left out of Arctic policy-making. Species such as polar bears, walruses, and Arctic foxes are seeing their habitats shrink. The melting of sea ice also disrupts migratory routes of whales and birds, altering food chains and threatening extinction. What happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. Melting ice affects ocean currents like the Gulf Stream, which regulates temperatures in North America and Europe. Destabilizing this system could trigger extreme climate events across the planet. The Arctic is a mirror of our ambition, but also of our failure to plan beyond the next generation. Tim Marshall reminds us that the Arctic is not just about maps and minerals. It's about what kind of future we're building, and, what we're willing to sacrifice to get there. This is the final frontier of geopolitics. But it might also be the final warning. Let's now close the book on this global journey, and reflect on what geography continues to teach us in a rapidly changing world. From Europe to Africa, Asia to the Arctic, Tim Marshall's message is clear. Geography still shapes power, it limits choices, it creates fears, it builds nations, and honestly breaks them too. We may live in a digital age, but the map still matters. If this series changed how you see the world, let us know in the comments. And hey, don't forget to subscribe, because the world may change, but the ground beneath us never stops telling the